A few years ago, my husband Tom was asked for advice for a planting to be done at the local cemetery. They wanted something with height, color, minimal care, and oh yes, it had to grow in a somewhat shady area. While Tom had just the right shrub to suggest. I'm Mary Holm, host of Prairie Yard and Garden, and today let's check out and learn about Tom's pick, hydrangeas. They are well on the way to becoming one of the most popular and versatile shrubs in America.
Funding for Prairie Yard and Garden is provided by Heartland Motor Company, providing service to Minnesota and the Dakotas for over 30 years in the heart of truck country. Heartland Motor Company, we have your best interest at heart. Farmers Mutual Telephone Company and Federated Telephone Cooperative, proud to be powering Asira, pioneers in bringing state-of-the-art technology to our rural communities. Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham, Minnesota. And by friends of Prairie Yard and Garden, a community of supporters like you who engage in the long-term growth of the series. To become a friend of Prairie Yard and Garden, visit pioneer.org/PYG.
They say the state fair is the great Minnesota get-together. Well, I think our local county fairs are a great get-together too. I love to attend the Stevens County Fair and usually help with some booths and divisions. This past year, I helped in the horticulture section of the Homemakers building. Some lots only had a few entries, but when it came to hydrangea flowers, there were a bunch. To find out more about all the different kinds, I called Debbie Lonnie, who said, "Come for a visit." So thanks for letting us come.
I'm very happy you're here today.
Debbie, tell us about yourself and your background.
Well, I have a degree in horticulture and I've been in the business a long time. I started in retail, but I came to Bailey Nurseries almost 30 years ago. And most recently, I've become product development manager, where I am responsible for genetics for Bailey brands like Endless Summer hydrangeas, First Editions plants, and Easy Elegance roses.
How did you get involved with hydrangeas?
Well, I think it really started about 20 years ago is when we launched the original Endless Summer hydrangea. And since then, that brand has introduced about 6 varieties. We have another new one coming next year. But then it kind of morphed into other species like panicle and smooth hydrangeas, and more breeding was happening. We had some of our own breeding, and it's just really grown across the board, where hydrangeas are the biggest product line that we have at the nursery.
How have hydrangeas changed over the years?
Well, they've become better garden plants in a number of different ways. First of all, size-wise. Back in the day when I got into retail, we grew PG hydrangea. And I remember at that garden center, they were 25 feet tall in the landscape. Now we've been able to bring them down, and many are 7, 8 feet tall. But modern breeding has brought them down 4, 5 foot tall, and I think in a few years, you're gonna see some even shorter. On the panicles, we are getting color. So they start white, then we start to get some pink tones, and you see that right behind me, and even red tones. So there's just a lot of exciting elements to hydrangea breeding.
When was this display area established?
This garden, which is located in Cottage Grove, Minnesota, is at our propagation range, and we call it the Nord Farm. We propagate tens of millions of young plants here every year. And we thought we would like to have a display garden that has ultimately grown into a place to really feature the plants in the Bailey brands. And we keep adding new things to it all the time as we introduce new plants in our program.
How many varieties of hydrangeas does Bailey's grow?
Let's talk about the species for a minute. Hydrangea arborescens, smooth hydrangea, we grow 3 varieties. Panicle hydrangeas, which you see behind me, we grow approximately 12 to 15 varieties. And hydrangea macrophylla, mophead hydrangea, endless summer hydrangea, we grow about 7 varieties. Most of them are in the Endless Summer brand, but there are a few old varieties, oldies but goodies, that still sell.
You mentioned Endless Summer, but what are the varieties that Bailey's has developed?
Well, we have developed almost all the Endless Summer varieties or breeders that we work with. The initial varieties came from some outside breeders, although Endless Summer was discovered in a yard not far from this greenhouse range. Recent introductions, Summer Crush, Bloomstruck, Popstar, those were all bred at our breeding farm down in Athens, Georgia. So we have a facility there. We have 3 master breeders on staff, and their biggest crop is Endless Summer type hydrangeas.
What is the difference between a shrub and a tree hydrangea?
So we're talking about panicle hydrangeas. So behind me is a panicle. And a tree form hydrangea is a shrub pruned into a tree. It's not a different variety, it's not a different species, it's all how we treat it at the nursery. So we put it in the bare root field, we let it be a shrub for a year, and then the next spring we cut all the branches away but one, and we train that up into a trunk. And the following year we prune that trunk back, the branches start to grow on the top, and it becomes a tree. And as long as the homeowner does some nice pruning and shaping on it, you can always keep it a tree. And it has a very distinct trunk to it.
So it's not grafted?
No, we call that in the nursery industry own root. It's grown on its own root. So if you see vanilla strawberry, limelight, berry white, it's a long process, 3 years in an Oregon bare root field before we can harvest it and get it off to our customers, which are B&B growers and garden centers who pot them up.
Are the hydrangeas that you can get in the spring of the year, you can get them like at the flower shops around Easter time, are they the same as the varieties that you have, and are those hardy?
They are the same species, but they are what we classify as florist types. And it's a whole different breeding line. The Dutch do a wonderful job at that, but they develop plants that are perfect for pot culture, for the greenhouse, for holidays, most specifically Easter. You can buy one of those and put it in the ground. I would say 9 times out of 10 it will die the first winter because it doesn't have any hardy blood in it at all. Endless Summer and those varieties that we have developed came from some plants that had hardier rootstock that will grow in a Zone 4 Minnesota winter. Not so much Zone 3, a little too cold in Zone 3.
Debbie, would it be possible for us to go and look at some of the actual varieties and find out the different kinds?
Absolutely, you bet, let's go look.
Once considered a foreign food, salsa is now a beloved staple condiment at many Minnesota parties and picnics. We love salsa for chips, tacos, and a host of other delicious foods. The mix of tangy tomatoes with a little bit of spice delights your taste buds and brings out the flavor in other foods. Best of all, salsa is easy to make, has endless variations, and you can get all the ingredients fresh from local farmers and farmers markets. Our friend Liz Harris does a lot of canning herself and often sells her goods at local farmers markets. She is with us today to walk us through a basic salsa recipe that you can make fresh or store for later.
Well, Mary, we always start with a tomato base, and they should be chopped kind of medium fine because you don't want them too big so that the chips or whatever you're using can pick them up nicely. I happen to like a paste tomato called Super Sauce because it's less juice, firmer texture, thinner skin on it too, so you can chop it up and it works very well. If you want to spice things up, Mary, you can add any number of different peppers. We have one vendor at the farmer's market that brings all kinds of different peppers of many heats. And you can use cilantro, you could use chilies, jalapeno peppers. I like a little bit of basil and salsa.
I'm getting hungry. Let's get started.
We need to chop the tomatoes fairly small so that they will fit nicely on a chip or whatever we're using. Then we're going to finely cut the onions and the cilantro so that they mix in nicely with the tomatoes. Squeeze half of a lime, and then we'll add a little bit of coarse salt on the top to bring out the flavors.
Liz, you make this look so easy. I think anybody can do this.
I hope they do.
To find local producers in your area, go to minnesotagrown.com. Debbie, what are the most common varieties or types of hydrangeas?
Well, there are 3 main species that we grow in Minnesota. The main one is the panicle hydrangea, followed by the smooth hydrangea. Many people know these as Annabelle hydrangeas. And then finally, the hydrangea macrophylla, which is part of the Endless Summer brand that we have here at Bailey Nurseries.
What's the difference between the 3 different species?
Well, flower type, hardiness, bloom color. I would say the easiest plant to grow is the panicles that we are standing in. Hardy to zone 3, way up into northern Minnesota. Easy to prune, easy to care for. The next easiest one are these Annabelle types. What I love about them is they're so versatile in their sun needs. They can tolerate full blaring sun all day, or they can tolerate shady spots and still bloom and brighten up a nice space. And what's nice about Annabelles is they're not too big, about 4 or 5 foot tall. The panicles can go from 4 foot to 12 foot in height. And then the least easy to grow for Minnesota gardeners are the macrophyllas, but some people do get away with them in the right part of the garden.
Do they all have different kinds of flowers?
They do. They're called different things. This kind of V-shaped flower is called a panicle flower. And it's a very unique shape to panicle hydrangeas. Now, in macrophyllas, this is called a mop head, just a nice round flower. Americans love their mop heads. They want full mop heads. And then Annabelles have also that standard mop head, big round flower. There's color changes in all of these. Annabelle starts white, beautiful white in June into July. And it's just a stunning plant, but it does age to this lime green. Some people don't like it, but it's just the natural aging process. Panicle hydrangeas start pure white in July. And this pink that you see on this flower I'm holding, this is a result of nighttime temperatures in mid to late summer. When the nights cool off, you get down to 60. All of a sudden, at the bottom of the panicle down here, you start to take on pink tones. Then they work their way up through the entire panicle, and sometimes they turn red. That varies by variety. Some, though, don't take on any pink. There are so many varieties now, you have to really look at that tag and read the description. If you like this red color, which is super fantastic, you got to look for the right varieties.
Is there anything that you can do to extend bloom time of the hydrangeas?
You can prune a little differently. First of all, macrophyllas, Endless Summer, are known as reblooming types. So when the first flowers turn brown, just head them off a little bit, and that will help stimulate some new bloom. On panicles, we prune these in the spring, real early, before they even leaf out. Now, if you don't want to do that, you'll bloom earlier. If you prune it hard, it'll bloom a little later. But you can't change the timing too terribly much on these. And Annabelle types, you prune early in the spring I just shear them off about 8 inches off the ground. You can do it blindfolded. There's nothing scientific about it. And you cut them down and then they come up, they bloom on new wood. This is a new wood bloomer. This is a new wood bloomer. Macrophylla types bloom on old wood and new wood, and they will overwinter. Now, sometimes in a Minnesota winter, they will freeze off. If we have really cold, if we don't have good snow cover, those flowers might freeze, but it is the reblooming aspect of the endless summer types that bring more color on in the middle of the summer. So there are some serious differences in flowers between all these different species.
How do you know what to look for and your hardiness, or which ones are the best adapted for your area?
Well, it's good to know where you live and what zone you are in, and that's all over the internet. There's a USDA map. Minnesota is divided into 2 zones. The southern half of the state is zone 4, which means it will go to 30 below, sometimes worse. Zone 3 up north gets to 40 below. So know your zone and buy a plant that's listed. Every good plant label at the garden center, or even if you buy it mail order, all that information should be there, and it will tell you what zone it is hardy in. Panicles will almost always carry a zone 3 designation, and so will Annabelles, but Macrophyllas will be zone 4 or 5. The other really important information on that tag is the mature height and spread. Do you want a dwarf one? Do you want a tall one? Do you want one that gets 8 foot wide or less? You have to plant the right plant in the right place so it fits properly and you don't have to prune and prune and prune. So that's all information that should be on a good plant label.
Debbie, we are surrounded by beautiful hydrangeas. Could you please show us some that you would recommend?
I'd be happy to. Let's take a walk through.
I have a question. How can I start growing grapes in my backyard?
Grapes are a really cool thing to grow in the backyard because you can grow them in a lot of different ways. They can be decorative, you can grow them to make wine, and you can grow them to make juice or jellies. So they're a really fun crop. The first thing you should think about is, what is your goal with growing your grapes? Are you growing them for a decoration, maybe for a privacy fence from your neighbor? Or are you growing them to really produce a lot of grapes? Because that'll determine what kind of space and where you put them in your yard. If you're wanting to grow grapes to make either juice, wine, or jelly, I recommend growing your grapes in a row and making sure that your grapevines have adequate sunlight. They should have sunlight for at least 8 hours a day, but hopefully more. Hopefully they're in direct sun all day. There are a number of different wine grape varieties in Minnesota, including things like Marquette, Frontenac, and the newest grape, Itasca. So if you want to make wine, you should choose a wine grape variety. If you're wanting to make juice or jelly, you should choose a variety like Edelweiss, Brianna, or Bluebell, something with a really nice floral taste that's meant for making jellies. So another thing that you're gonna wanna do when you plant your vineyard is you're gonna want to think about a trellis. So in the vineyard where we're filming today, these vines are growing on a trellis, and you can build a trellis with wooden posts and wires that are running between those posts. But if you don't want to do that, you can also put your grapevines along maybe your garden fence or the fence that borders your property, as long as they have something sturdy to grow up, because that's where they're going to be for a pretty long time. Another thing you'll want to consider is birds. Some birds really like grapes. So make sure that you've got some way to keep your birds out. And usually what we do is put up bird netting over our vines in order to keep those birds away, especially if you're trying to get a lot of grapes for juice or wine.
Ask the Arboretum Experts has been brought to you by the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum in Chaska, dedicated to welcoming, informing, and inspiring all through outstanding displays, protected natural areas, horticultural research, and education.
Mary, I'm going to show you a few Hydrangea paniculata varieties that are on the market, some new and some old. So we are standing behind a brand new variety that Bailey Nurseries introduced in 2022. It's in our first editions brand, and it's called Little Hottie. This was bred down at our farm in Athens, Georgia. It tolerates the heat of Georgia and the cold of Minnesota. But what's so lovely about it is it's compact and small, so it fits smaller gardens or foundation plantings. And while this is a young plant, it's only going to go about 3.5 foot tall by maybe 4 foot wide in the landscape. You can see the flower heads are nice and full. They start out a little lime green and then turn white. They take on a little pink, but not a lot of pink. So it's a super new variety for small spaces in the marketplace.
Well, this is so nice and full, but why is that different, or how is that different than the plant right next to you?
Well, this is a very old variety that's been on the market a long time and still is sold. It's a variety called Hydrangea paniculata tardiva, came from Europe. And it has a very open flower head. It's not as full. So there are different flower types botanically. These very showy white flowers are called sterile flowers, and these little bumps are called fertile flowers. So it makes for a very open panicle. It's a really kind of a delicate, lacy look, and some people just love the look of that. Panicles like full sun, and in my mind, full sun means 6 hours or more of direct sunlight every day. Well, you could have sun from morning till 2 o'clock, from noon till sunset, you would do just fine. They need full sun. Mary, one of the things breeders have done in modern breeding is bring the size down on panicles. So we're standing in between two very popular intermediate sizes. This one is called Strawberry Sundae, and it came from a breeder in France. And it is kind of the sister seedling to vanilla strawberry, which is a tall plant that gets about 8 foot tall. And on your side is little lime hydrangea. And it's kind of like the baby version of limelight, which started the whole craze in hydrangeas. These plants get about 4 foot, 4.5, same width. And again, they are great for small gardens, for foundation plantings, for short, informal hedges. They don't get too big in the landscape. And they're just as easy to grow as any of the big varieties.
When should you prune these?
All these panicles, doesn't matter size, should be pruned early in the spring before they start growing. So March, early April, when they're still dormant. Now, one thing we've learned over the last couple years is these shorter varieties take a light shearing. Just cut off last year's flowers. Don't get crazy and cut 50% off. The tall ones, though, really benefit from some cutting back. So I have vanilla strawberry in my backyard. Every spring I take at least 35% of it, I cut it back, and it comes back up full and beautiful with very thick stems that hold the flowers. So the techniques now are becoming a little different depending on whether it's a big tall variety or if it's a compact variety. Mary, I'm showing you Limelight hydrangea, which is kind of the granddaddy of all the panicles. One of the first panicles that came out that really started the hydrangea craze. It's about 22, 23 years old. You can see it's a tall plant, and the flowers are proportionately bigger than some of those intermediate types that we talked about. It's called Limelight because it starts lime green and then it turns white. It doesn't take on too many pink tones, a little bit, but it is a great plant as a shrub. This one is also trained into a tree quite often and used in the landscape as a small tree. It's part of the Proven Winner program and was one of their first hydrangea introductions well over 20 years ago.
If you want to plant this hydrangea or any of the others you've shown us, when is a good time to do that?
Well, you can really do it anytime the ground is diggable. In the spring, when the frost goes out, you can go to the garden center and buy a container grown panicle and get it in the ground. End of the season, September, fall is a great time to plant. You can find these things in the garden center. You can get them in the ground. I would mulch them well with some wood chip mulch, not rocks, no rocks ever. Maybe the second spring, a shot of fertility, something very basic, 10, 10, 10, 12, 12, 12. They're not the heaviest feeders in the world. They're so easy to grow. And then keep them well watered, especially if we have a midsummer drought. They don't like wilting and drying down, because then the flowers will turn brown. So if it's a dry July, get your hose down there and do a good deep soaking and keep the ground evenly moist. Mary, I'm standing next to my very favorite panicle hydrangea. It's a variety called Berry White, and it was bred in France by Mr. Renaud, who has brought us a number of different varieties that are in our First Editions program. It's a big plant, gets about 7 or 8 foot tall, but it starts blooming in July. The flowers are big, they start out white, and then at the bottom of the panicle you start to get these strawberry red tones, and this will work its way all the way up and it's almost red by the end of August into early September. It's just a great, great showy plant with the best color of any of the panicles, and that's why it's my favorite.
Debbie, is this one plant?
Actually, this is a group of 3. We're standing in a little area that's called our hedge garden. So we've tried to take some of our varieties and show how you can use them informally in a hedge. You know, none of that box pruning. Just put them together so you can screen off your neighbor or anything else. And so there's about 3 plants here in a row. Berry will go about 7 to 8 foot tall and 7 to 8 foot wide. So it will take up some good space once it matures in the landscape.
Has this been pruned to be nice and bushy like this?
No, there's not a ton of pruning done in this garden. But if this was my garden next spring, I'd come out in March. I'd take about 25% back, shape it into a nice shape, and that will keep the stems nice and stiff for the following year.
Should you use hydrangeas by themselves because they're so showy, or can they be used as in combination?
Oh, I think they should be mixed in the landscape. If you have a foundation planting, mix it with other things, other colors, dark-leafed 9-barks or barberries or other blooming plants, maybe that bloom at a different time of the season so you have color that you extend throughout the entire season. But just like this example, it can be used all by itself in an informal hedge situation. Very versatile group of plants to work with.
Debbie, I have learned so much and I have enjoyed this so much. Thank you for letting us come and see these beautiful hydrangeas.
Well, we were just very happy to have you. I want you to know that there are more new ones coming in the next few years, so please come back and we'll show you our very exciting special introductions.
Oh, I think we should be back.
All right.
Funding for Prairie Yard and Garden is provided by Heartland Motor Company, providing service to Minnesota and the Dakotas for over 30 years. In the heart of truck country, Heartland Motor Company, we have your best interest at heart. Farmers Mutual Telephone Company and Federated Telephone Cooperative, proud to be powering Asira, pioneers in bringing state-of-the-art technology to our rural communities. Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham, Minnesota. And by friends of Prairie Yard and Garden, a community of supporters like you who engage in the long-term growth of the series. To become a friend of Prairie Yard and Garden, visit pioneer.org/PYG.